Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. I'm Pastor Siri, and today I have a very special episode to share with you. This morning at church, my kid, my youngest, decided that they felt comfortable enough to come out in front of the whole congregation. And so this is the conversation that we had. And I hope that you watch the whole thing, because even if you consider yourself to be a little bit more progressive like I did, I've had so much to learn in this process. And Ash is an incredibly educated, thoughtful, smart, and articulate young person. So I hope you enjoy this video. The video quality is not fantastic, but I think you'll still get the message. And just one caveat, if anybody decides they want to put something negative or rude or bigoted in the comments, that will be deleted, because I am a mother and this is about my child and all children in the LGBTQ family who often feel incredibly alienated by Christians and other religions. And it is really important that we realize that this is kids and their sense of self-worth as human beings, and their ability to have the right to live and to thrive on this planet, of which I think they have every right to do. And so I hope and encourage that you will listen to this, and maybe you will learn something new. Thank you.
Where's my speaker? I know. Oh, what do I hear? Are you in a closet? Come out of the closet. Hey, welcome. Well, everyone was wondering who our special speaker was. They were going, Ash Strumman Campbell, how many children do you have, Pastor Siri? But we thought we'd have a little bit of fun and to have this as a special way in which we would tell you that Ash wants to be called Ash. And tell us why you want to be called Ash.
Well, I am trans, so I also would prefer to go by they, them pronouns, and basically, the reason that I changed my name and pronouns is because the ones that I had didn't feel comfortable. They just kind of felt wrong. And I think the main part of that is just that no one's going to hear like the name Lucy and think that that's anyone but a girl. And I don't want to be perceived as a girl.
Correct. And trans is the umbrella, and underneath that is gender fluid, which is how you identify. And gender fluid, that's something I had never heard of before at all. And actually, you hadn't heard of until you had some education and learned a little bit more about it and said, that's how I feel. So what does that mean?
Gender fluid is when someone's gender changes. The amount that it changes and the genders that it changes between can be different. Like, there are some gender fluid people where, like, they can feel like one gender for years before, like, another year later, they might say, no, I feel like a girl now or something. But then I'm on the other end of that spectrum, which is my gender becomes something different like every few hours or minutes. My gender might change once or multiple times as this interview happens.
Which is something that I don't understand because I am cisgendered, which means every single morning when I've woken up my entire life, people say I'm a girl or a woman, and that's how I feel. That's what makes me cisgendered, which means on the same side of your gender, whereas trans just means on the other side of the gender that you were assigned at birth. All right, so because we have done so much talking and so much reading, and you are one of the most educated people that I know on this subject, we thought we would do a little educational myth-busting here in this time. And so the first question that I have is, what is the difference between gender identity and sexual orientation?
So gender identity is the gender that you feel like. So, you could feel like a boy, you could feel like a girl, you could feel like something else entirely, none of the above, or something in between all of those. And there's like a bajillion genders, it's crazy. But sexual orientation is the gender or genders that you are attracted to. So, a woman who's attracted to other women is a lesbian. A woman who is attracted to men is straight. A woman who would be attracted to both men and women could be bisexual, and so on and so forth. So, yeah.
Perfect. And so there's the LGBTQIA. There's a lot of letters in that acronym. What do they stand for?
So L stands for lesbian, which is women or non-binary people who are attracted to other women or non-binary people. The G stands for gay, which is men or non-binary people attracted to other men or non-binary people. B is for bisexual, which is anyone who is attracted to two or more genders. T is for trans, which we kind of just went over. It's anyone who, doesn't identify with the gender they were assigned to at birth. Q is for queer, which is sort of like an umbrella term for basically anyone who maybe doesn't want to have a specific label to tie down how they feel, and just also kind of including anyone who maybe wouldn't be otherwise included in the acronym. I is for intersex, which is for people who have characteristics in their physical body that are both male and female. So gender is not binary and sex is not binary either. And then A can actually stand for 3 different things, because there are lots of things that start with A, apparently. So the first thing it can stand for is asexual, which is when someone doesn't feel sexual attraction or doesn't feel as much as the average person would. And this is not the same as celibacy, which is a choice. Being asexual is not. Aromantic is people who, don't feel romantic attraction, so they may want to be your friend, but they do not want to be anything more than your friend. And then there's agender, which is just people who do not experience gender. They looked at gender and they said, no thank you, not today.
So really, the LGBTQIA encompasses both gender identity, who you think you are, and sexual orientation, who you're attracted to.
Yes.
Okay. So what is the difference between a trans woman and a trans man? And the reason I ask this question is because this has been really big in the news in the last year or so. And there's been a lot of misinformation that has been out there and a lot of prejudice that has been out there. And people don't even always know what the right term and how to identify somebody. So what is a trans woman and what is a trans man?
So a trans woman is someone who identifies as a woman, but maybe when they were born, the doctor probably said it's a boy. And trans man is the opposite of that. So one good way to think about it is, if you're trying to figure out whether someone is a trans woman or a trans man, is basically, what do they identify as? Because a trans woman is a woman and a trans man is a man, because that is how they feel, and therefore that is what they are.
What helped me to understand this is, if I woke up tomorrow morning and I was in a man's body, I would still probably feel like a woman up here. And that would be maybe that experience. That's the closest I can have to understanding what that would feel like. And so that's not something that I think would go away for me. I think it'd be fun for a day. I'd see how many pull-ups I could do. But then at some point I'd be like, you know what? I really do feel like a woman, and that is the experience that people have. And so trans people often do whatever they feel comfortable doing to take steps to make their outer appearance match what's in here and here. Does that make sense? Did I do it right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
about right.
So we're going to do some myths, myth busting.
Yep.
I'm going to throw a myth at you, and you're going to explain it. So first one, you, Ash, were just brainwashed by a very liberal mother and books about gender fluid, like all these poor youth these days, and if we just cracked down on all these books, none of this would happen.
Well, first of all, I don't know when I learned what the term gender fluid was, but I'm pretty sure that I never even heard of an actual person being gender fluid, either in fiction or like online, and certainly not in real life, until after I started to identify with that term. And if I'd never found that term, it wouldn't make me not gender fluid. I'd just be confused because my gender would always be changing and going all over the place, and I wouldn't have a term for what that was. So then I just wouldn't know what to call myself. So the reason that some of you might think that gender fluid is a new term, and it is, but that's because people are coming up with more terms to describe how they feel. And the reason that there are more people coming up with these terms is because it has become safer and safer to openly identify as gay or trans or whatever, and therefore there are more people who are being able to do so, and therefore being able to come up with their own names for their experiences. For a long time, being left-handed, for whatever reason, was horrible and evil, and anyone who was left-handed like myself would have been forced to write with their right hand. And then, when that prejudice finally went away, the number of left-handed people miraculously skyrocketed. Gee, I wonder why. But eventually, it just leveled out, and the percentage of left-handed people has stayed the same ever since. So I think that a very similar thing is happening right now with the LGBTQIA+ community. And also, the thing of being left-handed but being forced to write with your right hand is another good acronym. Not acronym, what?
Metaphor?
Yeah, metaphor for what a lot of trans people may feel with, feeling like a man, but being forced to go into the women's bathroom and being constantly told that you're a girl and whatnot, or vice versa. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I also think it's important for us to realize that books do not make anybody change their orientation. They don't have that kind of power. If that were true, everybody would be straight, because almost all representation in movies and television shows and books have been straight for most of history. But what they allow is representation, so that someone can go, hey, that looks like me, that feels like me, and that can be a community that someone maybe words they never had for themselves, and a possible community that can allow them to understand themselves better. So you are actually already mentioned this a little bit, but the myth that being trans is a new fad that never existed before, just like gay people first showed up in the 1970s.
So there has been evidence of people who are gay or trans for a very long time. There are a lot of different cultures that have had different words for trans people, like many Native American groups use the term two-spirited to describe certain trans people. And although I don't quite remember exactly which group this is, there is another group that has the term sister girls and brother boys, which are
Yes.
trans women and trans men respectively. And if you look throughout history, there are lots of examples of trans people, and there are lots of examples of gay people. If you read the Iliad, it is very clear that Achilles and Patroclus are in a relationship. Although, of course, because gay people are scary or something, Patroclus is always Achilles' friend, even though if you look at what ancient Greek people were saying about the story, whether or not Achilles and Patroclus were in a relationship was never a debate at the time. Everyone agreed that they were in a relationship.
So there's some bias in the way we look at history and the way we look at things that has changed our perception of how we see if gay people had existed, or even their comfort level in being out. Okay, got a couple more myths. Myth, you are too young to know this about yourself. We need to wait till you're older.
Well, I would say to that, when you were 16, did you know that you were a boy or a girl? Or would you consider yourself to be too young to know that you are cisgender? No, if a little girl who everyone agreed was a girl when they came out said, "I'm a girl," everyone would be like, "Yes, you are." But of course, if the doctor said, "It's a boy," then they said, "I'm a girl," then everyone would be like, "Oh my God, you're too young to know." And there's also the other side of that, which is that if an adult figures out that they're gay or trans or something, people will go, "Well, why didn't you know when you were younger?" So unless there's some magical age that you can, and you're only allowed to figure out whether or not you're queer at that specific point in time. You're only allowed to know on your 18th birthday. Not any time before or after, just your 18th birthday. Which, that wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, and that's why we listen to the stories of people who are in the LGBTQ community. The more we listen, the more we realize their own path of discovery in a world that very much says, this is how you fit in the box, and how long it took them to discover if they didn't fit in the box. So here's the last one that I ask. If a church wants to be LGBTQ inclusive, all they have to do is put "all are welcome" on their sign, and voila, it's fine.
Unfortunately, no, because a lot of Christians will use the Bible as an excuse to say, like, well, we're not homophobic. We just have different beliefs. Like, I see tons of Christians online to the point in which I'm actively wary of other Christians online who are like, basically, they say, I love everyone, but I also don't support gay and trans people. So they're basically trying to say that, I don't support this thing about you that you didn't choose and cannot change, but I love you, and all are welcome on this page, and I'm like, no. The instant that you said that you didn't support me, I did not feel welcome or safe, because there is an integral part of me that I can't change that is not welcome there. And so one thing that does basically always mean that a space is safe is if there's a pride flag on there. I would be very surprised if I ever walked into a space that had a pride flag on it and I wasn't safe or welcome there. But typically, a lot of Christians will just adapt this, like, love the sinner, hate the sin kind of thing, and they still think that being queer is a sin in some way. So myself and many, many other people in the LGBTQ community will often be quite wary of churches.
Yeah, and so if churches really do want to understand better and truly extend God's welcome to all people, that does take a little work on behalf of the church to first work through any natural biases you have. We all have them in our mind. No one is born perfectly like, oh yeah, clean slate, the culture never taught me anything. And so working through those, asking questions, learning, reading up on that. because we never want to be a church that tries to open its doors to a particular group of people, and then all of a sudden we say something we didn't know was super hurtful because we hadn't done the work. And so one of the things that churches could possibly do is they could work with a program like Reconciling in Christ, where they walk alongside the church and offer speakers and educations and lots of opportunities for churches to explore and ask lots of questions. And only if the church wants and votes at the end of the process, they create a statement that if accepted by the Reconciling in Christ Church, they can become an RIC church officially. And that branding means something. When LGBTQ community is looking for a church, some will not go into a church that does not have that on there because they are leery of possibly walking in and getting some sort of slant that might be painful. And so that's a possibility for any church, and we have quite a few ELCA churches that have gone through that process. I think as we wrap this up, because it's about that time, Ash and I put together a reading book list for anyone who is interested in learning more. God and the Gay Christian is written by a young man who, and this is a very beautiful biblical study. He goes through the Bible and all of those passages we've heard about, and he does a really good in-depth look at them. Queerfully and Wonderfully Made is also, I think it's by Lutherans, and this is specifically for queer youth. And if you're really interested in the biology of things, this is a science book called Queer Ducks. And basically this talks about how the natural world is a little bit more diverse than we've been told to believe it is. A book we read together is The T in LGBT by a very popular podcaster who is a trans man. And then the last one that you offered is, if you like history, this is the LGBTQ history book. So from a historical, scientific, and theological and experiential framework, there's a lot of ways in which we can learn to understand a little bit more, because there's a lot to learn. And for many of us, this is new, and that's okay that it's new, and it's okay if we have a lot of questions or we don't understand. But I do want to say it is a really big deal that Ash felt comfortable doing this in front of you all today. So I just want to say thank you.